Hello everyone and welcome to Study IQ English. I am Joycey Joy and we are going to start the second chapter of the Economic Survey 2021-22. Second chapter of the survey deals with fiscal developments. That is, fiscal developments or fiscal. The term fiscal refers to government policies. So it refers to the government policies of the fisc. That is, fisc means public purse. That is, the public policies or the government policies. So in this chapter we are going to discuss about the major fiscal developments that has taken place in the economy in the last 1 year, 2021-22 financial year. We will also discuss that from the perspective of the COVID-19 and the post-pandemic recovery of the economy. We will see how did the expenditure profile of the government look like and how did the revenue of the government turned out to be. Then other fiscal indicators also we will be discussing in much detail. So getting started with this chapter, first let us come to the overview of the fiscal developments that had taken place in the economy. Before that, a little bit an introduction regarding the fiscal policy of the government during the last 1 year. So the fiscal policy in overall we can term it as calibrated and flexible. These are the two terms that we can use in order to define the fiscal policy. So calibrated and flexible policy. These are the two terms that we can use. So calibrated and flexible. Calibrated, why? Because the fiscal policy acted as a very significant tool for the economy to recover from the pandemic. That is why it was calibrated. And why flexible? Because the fiscal policies that were taken during 2021-22 financial year was very much flexible in order to adapt to any changes in the situation. That is, to adapt to the evolving situation. So that is why it is termed as flexible. Then there were two major focus areas for the fiscal policy. One was the vulnerable sections. That is, support given to the vulnerable sections. And second one was resilient recovery. These were the two pillars of the fiscal developments in India in the last 1 year. So in this chapter we will be discussing about the fiscal developments that took place in India in 2021-22. Then the survey also suggests certain policy measures in order to enhance the efficiency of the government spending. So this suggestions also we will understand and we will learn because this might be very important for your examination. So let us come to the chapter. First coming to the overview of the chapter. So coming to the overview, first thing is that we have already discussed about the barbell strategy. In the last video or in the last chapter, we have discussed about the barbell strategy and how it is different from the earlier waterfall strategy. So within the barbell strategy, there is an agile fiscal policy response. We also discussed about the agile fiscal policy response. So the agile fiscal policy response adopted by the government, it was a mix of stimulus measures plus building safety nets for the poor. So the agile fiscal policy response was a mix of stimulus response as well as the safety nets, especially for the poor and the vulnerable. If you look at some of the examples of such fiscal policy response, one is direct benefit transfers. We have already discussed about all these government responses in detail in the previous chapter, but we are just quoting the examples in order to connect it with the present situation. So direct benefit transfers, emergency credit facility given to the small businesses, then world's largest food subsidy program. We will be discussing about that for sure. Then the Bayesian strategy by introducing a series of stimulus packages. Then the fiscal response of the government, it focused on stimulating the demand of the economy. Then boosting investment or investment boosting measures. For example, the production linked incentive scheme, which boosted or which helped in boosting the investments of the economy. Then enhancing the capex, capital expenditure. So all these were some of the focus areas of the government during that time. Now, if you look at the capex, the capital expenditure of the government, we will see that the capital expenditure of the government had increased significantly after the COVID-19 or soon after the lockdown imposed by the COVID-19. There were movement restrictions on the containment zones. Then there were also lack of supply of labor because of the restrictions, and the contractors and the workers were not willing, they were unwilling to work because of the restrictions and health related issues. Even though all these were there during the first phase or during the first wave, according to survey, in the second wave of the pandemic, everything got much easier. That is easy movement of goods and services, labor, then also the health related restrictions also came down. So this pushed the capex, the capital expenditure of the government. And according to the survey, the capital expenditure has shown an increasing trend during the first 3 quarters of 2021-22. So till the third quarter, and the fourth quarter data is yet to be made available. So till the third quarter, that is the first 3 quarters of financial year 2021-22, the capital expenditure showed a increasing trend. That is an upward movement in the capital expenditure. So that is with regard to capex. Now, coming to the overview, revenue receipts have gone by 72.2% on year-on-year basis. This is just an overview. Definitely we will be going into the details, all the details of everything. So revenue receipts gone up by 67.2% year-on-year basis. Growth of over 50% in gross tax revenue. Gross monthly GST collections have crossed 1 lakh crore consistently since 2021 July. The new public sector enterprise policy and asset monetization strategy. These two strategies have increased the rate of disinvestment and privatization. These two policies of the government shows the direction in which the government is working on. That is how much focus government is giving on privatization and strategic disinvestment. Strategic disinvestment and privatization. So government through these two policies, new public sector enterprise policy and asset monetization strategy, both we will discuss separately in detail. Then a strong emphasis was given on capital expenditure. So this is evident from 2021-22 budget and this year's budget, 22-23 budget also. So in the budget, there is an increasing outlay for capital expenditure. Again, in Union Budget 2021-22 also, the capital expenditures were very high. There was an increasing outlay for capital expenditure, and more emphasis is given for railway, road, urban transport, then power, telecom sector, textiles, affordable housing, and a special focus given on national infrastructure pipeline, which we will be discussing in detail. NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline, definitely we will discuss in detail. And apart from that, government also gave an increasing focus on PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme. 13 more sectors are added into the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, and total outlay is 1.97 lakh crore. Okay, for the Production Linked Incentive Scheme. So production linked incentive scheme also we will take up in much detail. What is the purpose of it? Actually, production linked incentive scheme is supposed to bring multiplier effects into the economy. One is it will boost the output or the GDP. Another one, it can create employment opportunities. So multiple effects, multiplier effects we will discuss for sure. Apart from that, credit guarantee schemes, export subsidies or export boost incentives, then affordable food or free food grains for the poor. All these, they are all a part of barbell strategy, which we have seen what is barbell strategy, but all these government measures we will take up in detail and we will discuss for sure. Then central government debt has gone up from 49.1% of GDP in 2019-20 financial year to 59.3% of GDP in 2020-21. So 2021 financial year has seen an increase in the government debt. And what could be the major reason for it? The important or the most significant reason for increase in government debt is that it is because of the fiscal policies of the government. That is, the government has introduced certain fiscal policies to boost the investment in the economy, especially after the COVID-19. So government took up the responsibility to revive the economy from the after effects of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown. And that is the reason why the debt of the government has gone up. Okay, so that is it with regard to the overview. Now, let us come to the fiscal policy strategy in the aftermath of the pandemic. That is, after the COVID-19 pandemic or after the lockdown imposed by COVID-19 pandemic, how did the government respond to the economic needs through fiscal policies? So, coming to fiscal policy strategy in the aftermath of the pandemic. Government focused on building safety nets for the vulnerable sections in the initial phase. So, we have seen two major legs of barbell strategy. One was to create safety nets and second one was to adopt flexibility in the policy measures. So one was building safety nets, especially for the vulnerable section. And there are many examples in order to substantiate this fact that government was trying to help the vulnerable sections. Like, for example, free food program, then MSME sector being one of the most vulnerable category because their investment is less and also their working capital requirements are also high. The MSME sector was helped with credit guarantee scheme. Government provided credit guarantee. Then production linked incentives to many sectors. So all these were initiatives taken by the government to support the vulnerable group. And there was an enhanced focus on capital expenditure in the second half. So in the initial phase, we see that the immediate purpose or immediate objective of the government was to help the vulnerable groups, the vulnerable category, by providing support to them. But later in the second phase, we see that the government wanted to bring in the vicious cycle of investment. Therefore, the government focused on capital expenditure. So, second phase, the focus of the government was on increasing the capex or the capital expenditure of the government. Now, in order to increase the capital expenditure, the government invested in infrastructure like railways, roads, urban transportation, telecom sector, power sector, textiles, which has a huge potential for exports, and affordable housing. So these were major focus areas of the government. So these were the major focus areas, and as I said, then production linked incentive scheme and national infrastructure pipeline. These two we will discuss separately in detail because I expect questions from both of these either in the prelims or the mains examination, the next upcoming prelims or mains exam. So PLI, production linked incentives, and national infrastructure pipeline we will be discussing in much detail. So the focus was on capex or capital expenditure in the second half. PLI or the production linked incentives schemes were introduced for 13 sectors and a total outlay was 1.97 lakh crore rupees. So total outlay of very high amount, and that also for 5 years starting from 2021-22 financial year. Then there was an emphasis on liquidity enhancing and investment boosting measures. So liquidity enhancement and investment boosting measures, again they are PLI, credit guarantee scheme, free food grains for the poor. All these can be said as the measures. Now looking quickly into some of the very important government measures during this time. So quickly looking into them. First one is credit guarantee schemes. Then loan guarantee scheme for COVID affected sectors. Loan guarantee for COVID affected sectors. Then scheme for tourist guides. They were all very vulnerable group which got an immediate impact after the COVID-19. So support for tourist guides. Then free 1 month tourist visa to 5 lakh tourists. It is to promote the tourism again. Then extension of Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, the employment generation program. Additional subsidies for fertilizers, additional fertilizer subsidy. Then free food grains under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Then there was a new scheme for public health scheme. So these are all some of the government measures that the government had taken during the time of COVID-19 and after that, which can be said as fiscal policy measures taken by the government. So that's it regarding the overview and also the strategy adopted by the government in the aftermath of the pandemic. We'll be continuing with fiscal developments in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Wishing you all the very best.